Welcome, children. We will be discussing religion in Chronicle of a Death Foretold. And so religion. First we should talk about Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He was born in Colombia during the time of a murder that Tressa will go into in her IO. Marquez was Catholic, and also he was raised by his grandparents, and his grandfather, he was some Civil War guy, but his grandmother taught him a lot about superstitions, which is another aspect, kind of like religion, that we will go into. So the two religions that are in this book, that one only kind of appears, but it still seems like a really important part whenever we research. We talk about Catholicism and Islam. Catholicism is the official religion of Colombia, and Islam, there is only 0.2% of the population that is Islam in Colombia. And that is because way before Marquez wrote the book, there was an Arab invasion into Colombia that was caused by the Ottoman Empire kicking out all the Arabs, and they all fled to Colombia. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So then there's a lot of Muslim influence in that country. So Catholicism, it's also, Colombia is also considered the country of the Sacred Heart because of this. They're very Catholic, Roman Catholic. They're one of the Latin countries, and Latin America takes up a big chunk of Catholic followers. Anyways, a lot of you guys know about Catholicism, so we should delve more into Muslim religion lifetime. One of the main beliefs in Islam is the oneness of God. It's not only monotheistic, but very monotheistic. They can't stress enough that God is beyond comprehension, and it's a Muslim person cannot even visualize what God would look like, because that would kind of make him humanized. So for a Muslim person, the purpose of existence is to worship God. And another important aspect of the religion is angels, and angels are the messengers of God, and they are also the ones who have to be very obedient to him. That, they because they're the messengers, they take all of his commands, and they also take the soul at death, and they record every action. Kind of the obedience thing again, because God is all watching. Here's a quote that I may or may not bring up later. Whoever does an atom's weight of good will see it. Whoever does an atom's weight of evil will see it. And I will bring that up later, like I said. Also, another aspect of Islam is that a man can choose from right or wrong, so he kind of has free will. And that's important too, because they can't really blame fate. Also, in just kind of the culture, not really the religion, the father is the provider for the family, and he's like the most responsible in the household. Michaela?
Okay, just with the Arab religion in general, you can see evidence of this, especially in Santiago's family. I believe Marquez says that his family birthed a lot of fighters, and they were once considered a really powerful family. And he talks about how the first two generations of Arabs still speak the language, and then the third generation, which I think Santiago is considered, still understand it, at least, even though they answer back in Spanish. So I'm going to talk more about the Christian aspect of the novel. So there are two main religious figures that we see, and this is the bishop and the priest. The priest in particular is kind of important because he said he would warn Santiago, but then he didn't think it was that big of a deal, so in the end he decided not to. And it's really important because he says they'll be innocent before God, if not before men. So in a way, he's condoning the murder that happens, even though this would normally be considered a crime. And he's justifying it in the eyes of God. And this is kind of an important idea because God is usually seen as the ultimate judge of right and wrong character, that kind of thing. And a lot of Christian denominations believe in the day of judgment, the last day where God will gather everyone together and judge them. But here you see like the people of the town taking on almost this their own role of God and like acting as the judges and the punishers of Santiago. And the priest in a way is saying this is okay, like you can do that. The bishop also, he comes to the town, and you see the town who's just been at this wedding. Pablo and Pedro are getting ready to kill somebody, and the bishop is coming, and the entire town comes out in their best clothes, dressed up to greet the bishop. And in a way, he doesn't fulfill his duty to the religion by coming to, or the faith at least, by coming to shore and like blessing the people who have been waiting for him and preparing for him, and he doesn't fulfill his obligations in this situation. I'm just gonna talk about some ceremonies that we see. So the first of these is that Santiago Nazar was christened, and this refers to baptism, which was to cleanse the person of original sin, which is the sin they're born with. And we also see several people in mourning. The widower is mourning for his wife, and Angela's family are mourning for their family that died. But it's important to keep in mind that they're rigorous about it outside the house to keep up appearances, but inside the house they're kind of lax about the mourning rules. There's also marriage, which we talk about Piera Vicario's marriage, where she's married forever, and Angela's marriage to Bayardo, obviously, which is, in a way, Bayardo buys his way into her family by like going to her family and like making them like him and saying, "Oh, I have a lot of money," showing that to them, and they like kind of crowd on her and like, "You have to marry him to like keep up our honor," and they pressure her into it. So it's not really the sacred ceremony and bringing together two people that it should be considered in the Christian faith. And we also see the Mass. The narrator's mother writes to him about this in her letter, and this is kind of how she originally judges Bayardo's character by saying, he helps with the Mass in Latin, and he takes communion on his knees, which kneeling in like the Catholic faith especially is seen as like one of the ultimate signs of like devotion and like kind of piety that you can show to God. And like Latin, before the rules kind of changed, Mass was given entirely in Latin, so it's kind of significant that he knows this. But remember, later she refers to him as, "I was wrong, he's a devil."
So, Santiago, of course, is a Christ figure, much like the other Santiago we know from 10th grade English, Old Man in the Sea, because Santiago means saint. So, well, first of all, let's look at the little things. Santiago, his name is Saint. He wore a white linen outfit when he was murdered. It's much like God's, or much like Jesus's robe whenever he was killed. He was stabbed in the hand and in the chest, like abdomen region. Also, he was stabbed against a wooden door, kind of like being nailed to a wooden cross.
So the twins like use their special sacrificial knives to kill him, so it's kind of like the slaughter of like the innocent lamb.
Yes. Good addition. Yeah, so Santiago's a Christ figure, and we can kind of see this in the way that other characters can be seen. Remember how I said that an angel in Islam is kind of like the obedient messenger? Well, there's a character with a very similar sounding name to the word angel, Angela. She's kind of like a messenger and a slave to Santiago. Well, whenever you think about it, whenever she says that Santiago Nazar is the man who took her virginity, which is kind of like sending a message to the population, kind of about God, even though it's a very distant connection. It's still kind of like that message that she sent. Remember that quote I said, whoever does an atom's weight of good will see it, whoever does an atom's weight of bad will see it. It's kind of how the whole entire town saw the evil that was going to happen between Pedro and Pablo whenever they killed Santiago, or God. Yeah, so it's kind of like the all-knowing, like the narrator. He knows pretty much everything, which
Placida Linera, I believe it is the one who she can kind of read omens in dreams, and she doesn't think it's an omen. But I did a little bit of research about like what almond trees in the context of the Bible means, and they're meant to represent like watchfulness and a promise of God's sudden blessing or punishment. So in this case, obviously we see like some punishments going on, but in the end, Angela does find happiness with, or at least some kind of connection with Byarder, so that could also be seen almost as a blessing. And they're one of the first trees to blossom, so this is another symbol of how like God is watching, and also like he's watching to see that his word is fulfilled. So if you consider his word to be like don't have premarital sex, like he's seeing that word like carried through in that killing of Santiago Nassar.
Beautiful work.
Are you gonna talk about superstition?
Yeah. Santiago's grandmother / guardian was superstitious, and she kind of taught him all the superstitions that he knew. It's kind of going back to magical realism that Madeline Blosser talked about. This is pretty much how dreams, violins, omens, and ghosts. So his grandma taught him about his superstitions. Ghosts are mentioned whenever Pura says to Angela, "Please tell me you are one with God." Or one with
still with the living.
I don't know where I got that. Please tell me you are still one with the living, which is kind of like she believes in ghosts. Like, oh, maybe you're not one with the living, and
they also like use a lot of exclamations. Like I believe it's Clotilda Armanta who says "for the love of God," and like different things like this, like exclamations calling on God to like protect them or help them in some way, which is also kind of a superstition.
Bye.
Don't paint in the dark, children.
Are you painting in the dark?